It's time to bring out the darkness within yourself to smite all foes who dare cross your path with Bravely Default's Dark Knight. The Dark Knight focuses primarily on sacrificing their own health to deal powerful dark attacks on their enemies, and then using their weakened state to push even more damage on those unfortunate to cross their blade. But let's first talk about the Dark Knight's specialty, Adversity. This specialty will boost the Dark Knight's physical and magical attack and defense by 10% every time they lose or expend 25% of their maximum HP. This buff stacks up to a 50% total increase to each stat, meaning that as you attack or take damage as a Dark Knight, you will be constantly getting stronger, while also becoming much harder to kill. This specialty is an amazing bonus to have built into the Dark Knight, as they will almost always get the full effect out of it during pretty much every fight in the game. So now let's switch gears and talk about the three primary abilities at the Dark Knight's disposal, the Bane attacks. Let's start off by talking about Dark Bane. The Dark Knight expends 20% of their max HP to deal a strong, dark-based physical attack. Two of these skills will also be enough damage to activate a stack of adversity, making any following attack that you do 10% stronger. Obviously, be mindful when spamming Dark Bane as to not send your Dark Knight too close to death without some kind of backup plan. Black Bane is the AoE version of Dark Bane, though it deals 25% more damage at the cost of expending 30% of the user's maximum HP. This also means it only takes one use of Black Bane to gain a stack of adversity, making each use of this attack stronger than the last. Rage is a little different from the previous two though. For 2 BP, the Dark Knight will enter a state where they constantly use Dark Bane until one of 3 conditions are met. All enemies on the field die, the user's HP reaches a value of 1, or 5 Dark Banes have been cast. Because of the raw power of the Dark Knight, plus the added adversity passive damage increase, the amount of destruction that Rage can cause is, in most cases, without equal, outside of Bravely Second shenanigans. Not to mention that when these attacks are paired with the Drain Sword magic, all damage you deal is instantly healed back, while still granting adversity stacks. To keep us from being here all day, I'm going to move on. But just know that there is so much damage potential here from just these 3 moves alone, and we still have so much left to go. Second up is something a bit different, Demon Master. For 6 MP, the Dark Knight has a chance of charming all enemies in combat who belong to the Demon family. This ability's success can be raised by the Arcanist's status ailment amp, but honestly, the utility of this ability is just really hard to justify. Charm can be nice, yes, but it'll rarely save the day. Don't forget about it just in case, but it'll probably just collect dust either way. Next up is Minus Strike. The power of this attack is determined by how much HP the user is missing. With the less your current health is, the stronger Minus Strike becomes. Because the Dark Knight spends their HP to deal damage, the opportunities to use Minus Strike at its full potential are many. The obvious pairing of Minus Strike and the Monk's Phoenix Flight should also not go unnoticed, as they synergize well with one another. Though, similar to Phoenix Flight, if the Dark Knight's missing HP count is more than 9,999, the extra missing HP will not be calculated outside of Bravely Second, hard capping its damage output. Next up is Absorb Magic. This ability will turn all potential magic damage the user takes that turn into MP regeneration. This can help against enemies and bosses that rely on traditional means of magic damage to hurt you, as you can completely shut out their attack options. But note I said traditional, as Absorb Magic will not activate on magic that has a physical property tied to it, so be careful around certain bosses. It is also important to mention that you cannot absorb magic that is reflected back at you. Next is Dark Nebula. This ability has the Dark Knight sacrifice 20% of their max HP to deal a powerful dark attack on all combatants, enemies and allies alike. Because of the sheer ferocity of this attack, there is a very high likelihood of Dark Nebula just outright killing your teammates if you aren't careful enough. Slap some form of absorption or mitigation to dark magic on your team and watch as your enemies are pelted with some of the best AoE magic in the game at no drawback. Dark Nebula takes a bit more preparation to make useful compared to some of the other Bane attacks I covered earlier, but dear god is it worth it. Lastly, for combat abilities is Life or Death. The user of this ability will immediately boost their physical and magical attack and defense by 50%, at the cost of putting Doom on themselves, where they will die in 5 turns. Doom cannot be cleansed by any means, so this ability's name does not lie. Use Life or Death as a means of setting up to finish combat before the Doom finishes its countdown. The 50% stat increase that the Dark Knight gets here is basically a full adversity buff, so take advantage of that and go to town on your enemies. Or have a White Mage cleanup crew on standby. Starting off the Dark Knight's list of support abilities is Abate Dark. This is the final Abate ability on our list, and it acts the way you'd expect it to. When equipped, the user will take reduced damage from any form of dark damage. Unlike Abate Light, dark damage is quite common among in-game bosses, so running this, or any other form of dark mitigation abilities or items for that matter, should probably be considered. The Dark Knight's specialty, Adversity, can see some use on other jobs when used as a support ability, but only if you intend to lose HP constantly. Don't just slap this on a party member and hope for them to take damage. If you want to get mileage out of adversity, plan around it, or it'll just be taking up space. Third is See You in Hell. When the user of this support ability is KO'd in combat by any damage source, they will create a powerful blast of energy that hits all enemies for damage equal to 4 conventional attacks. This support ability allows for you to basically punish enemies for getting a good hit on you, which means you can even lean into the sheer power of this ability and just start killing off your own party members to take advantage of the strength of this attack. There are a few things to point out though. First, if a party member with See You in Hell has re-raise applied to them, if they die, the ability won't activate. Also, See You in Hell will not activate if the user is the last one standing in combat, resulting in a game over no matter what. Ultimately, this ability is the ultimate middle finger to the enemy and is a lot of fun to play around with, but really isn't much else than that. Next up is Helm Lore. This is also our final lore ability to cover. This ability is the counterpart to the Templar's Arma lore, boosting the user's affinity with helms to its maximum. Helms generally only provide a large boost in defense, so if that's what you desire, then go right ahead. But otherwise, it might be better to go with the regular headpieces that come with bonus effects. Next is Gloom. For 1 support point, the user's dark damage potential is increased by 25% regardless of the type of attack it is. This is pretty much a must-have for builds that focus on using the Dark Knight's Rage or Dark Nebula, as paired with the sheer ferocity of this job's damage output already, you will have no issue hitting the 9,999 damage cap even within the limits of abilities like low leverage or not hitting enemy weaknesses. Seriously, don't pass up on this when building a job that focuses on dark damage. Last up on the support ability lineup is Physical Attack 30% up. This is obviously a huge boost to any character's physical attack and might be worth looking into if you just can't think of anything else worthwhile to run on a certain job. I would suggest at least trying other potential ideas for boosting your damage output first before resorting to this, but it's here for a reason. I don't think I need to state just how insane the Dark Knight is any more than I already have, but I'm going to anyways. With a combination of Rage and Drain under the effects of the Merchant's low leverage, the Dark Knight's damage becomes the mathematical peak of damage you can achieve in this game without dipping into Bravely Second. A single Dark Knight is more than enough to rip and tear through pretty much any encounter in the game that doesn't involve enemies that mitigate dark damage. But that's not all, as the Dark Knight's base agility is high enough that most enemies won't be able to get a hit on the Dark Knight, which allows our favorite edgelords to expend as much health as they want to blast all of their foes to high heaven. And this is all without me getting into the amazing specialty that is Adversity, or the fact that the Dark Knight synergizes so well with other physical attack jobs like the Monk or Pirate. There is just so much to love about this job, and this one overview video just isn't enough to cover it all. But of course, there are a few minor drawbacks to this job. For one, at the point that you get the Dark Knight, the game's difficulty takes a pretty big leap upwards, meaning that this job's first few potential forays are also like a trial by fire, which isn't really the best conditions to learn how to use this job and its unique properties and get comfortable with it. Either save playing the Dark Knight for later, or just be ready to take the time to learn its ins and outs for longer than most jobs. Also, for those who care about getting as much out of their jobs as they can, the Dark Knight has to pretty much be married to the low leverage ability, as otherwise you'll be overcapping on extra damage like crazy. As a sub-job, the Dark Knight's Minus Strike can be used to a pretty good effect by beefy jobs like the Monk, Pirate, or Valkyrie. Also, the support abilities like See You in Hell, Gloom, and Adversity can find some use on jobs that don't normally use conventional attacks. But it is important to note that Adversity is such a good specialty because it's built into the Dark Knight's kit, which other jobs don't have the luxury of. Because expending health is such a crucial part of the Dark Knight's identity, it can be hard to find alternative jobs that can use the job's attacks to a similar extent without the HP loss feeling overwhelming or clunky. If you want to play a Dark Knight, play the Dark Knight. Simple as that. Last stop on our journey today is the fashion tier list. I think this is going to be a bit of a controversial pick here, but I'm honestly not all that impressed by the Dark Knight armor for the boys as it seems many others are. They're good designs, but not amazing. The black and yellow color scheme is a personal favorite of mine, and I find it amusing that it is fairly difficult to tell the two boys apart from one another. Honestly, my main complaint with the job's design isn't even the outfit's fault, as the art style and limitations of the 3DS just make the Dark Knight armor feel like cardboard. All of the flaps and extra pieces of armor just feel like little pieces of paper glued onto the design. There are ups and downs to the design, but I think ultimately I'm going to land on a high B tier placing for our two gentlemen. Now the girls are a bit of a different story. For one, it is nice to tell who's who thanks to their hair being on full display, and I also think this outfit in general just looks better in the art style of the game. Not so papery, I guess is the word I've been going for. But I don't know if it's just me, but every time I look at this armor set for a period of time, I feel like as if the whole set is just sort of sagging, like it's way too heavy for Agnes and Adia. If that was the intention, then kudos to the designers. But I just think it looks weird, landing them also in B tier, with Agnes going a bit higher since I think she pulls off the look better than Adia.